Alright, I just want to say hi to all the new viewers and thanks to everybody who's came back to watch again another video. I'm going to cover real quick in this one a topic that one of my first videos was about. The first one was all of the tools that you need to do almost every job. And I always said that I'd touch base on it again and go back and do a minimum tool set that you need to go mobile and do these jobs. And I've been working out of the trunk of a car for a couple of weeks now, because I'm in the middle of rebuilding my truck. That's a different subject. There's more videos over here. This video is going to be very focused on just the tools that you're going to need to operate out of a trunk to get, 80 to 90% of the jobs done. Biased highly on diagnosis because of all the new vehicles that are out there. So again, thank you for everybody who came back to watch this. Welcome to everybody who's new to this channel. There's 40, 50 videos I got out now. Take your time, scroll around, look at some of these videos. They range from educational to just complete waste of time. But it's all fun. So subscribe, share with your friends. If you like a video here, if this one's educational, please give me a thumbs up, like it, subscribe, and get back to the truck. Some more day in the life of a mechanic. I know it's a little long, but it's very pertinent information. Please watch it as much as you can all the way through. I go over a lot of good points, and I don't feel like it's going to be a waste of your time at all. I think you're going to get some valuable information out of it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Alright, I've been working out of the trunk of the car for about 2 weeks now, and I'm going to go over all of the tools that you're going to need at a minimum to work mobily and do repairs out of the trunk of a car. I'm going to go through everything all over again, one by one, and we can see what we got here, see how it fits into the car. So, first thing I'm going to put everything in this box here. You can see how I organized everything. It's such a mess. It is so difficult to try to work out of the trunk of a car with this kind of box. You really need a box of drawers, on and on it goes. But if you're just starting out, this will give you an idea of the rough basics that you're going to need to be able to do the majority of repairs, aside from transmission, pan gaskets, or any other major rebuilds. I mean, with this setup here, you can do radiators, water pumps, valve cover gaskets. You can do a lot more involved jobs on a lot of different vehicles, a lot of different manufacturers, BMW, Mercedes, Audis, Volkswagens. There'll be a few other tools that you're going to need. I'm going to omit that out of this setup. I'm just going to show you the basics of what you really do need to get the job done right. So let me start by saying, I had a 1 1/4 inch wrench. I needed this for a ball joint. I'm going to omit this from the kit. If I need something like this, or if you need a tool that you don't have, it's a good idea to try to charge the customer for it, or at least have half of the cost put off to the customer. But if you don't have that tool, you should probably figure out a way to afford that so that you can get a larger tool set up if you have the room for it. So the first thing I got here is a full set of 3/8 deep sockets, all the way from 19 down to 10. And then to cover 8mm and such, I got 1/4 inch drive. I got an adapter and 10 deep, 8 deep, 1/4 inch drive, 10 shallow, and the 8 shallow, which is missing. Car ate that. A few adapters, 1/4 inch extensions, short and long. It's a lot nicer to have a few different options for the 1/4 inch extensions to get down into something deeper, but at least have a few. And on this rail I got 13/16 and 5/8 spark plug sockets and a 7/8 oxygen sensor socket. You're also going to need a 7/8 wrench. I'll go over that when I get to the top here. Also going to need 3/8 shallow sockets, all the way from 19 down to 9. And I got a few 1/2 inch sockets on here. Got a 1/2 inch ratchet over here, but I got 18. A lot of brake calipers, 18, 19, 21, 22, and 24 will pretty much be the minimum sizes that you need to get brake jobs done. If you're doing CV axles or anything like that, you're going to need up to a 36, maybe 40. But what you can do is, O'Reilly has a rental tool with the socket sets in it. So if you're just doing a one-off job like an axle, CV axle on something, you can use their rental tool and it'll really help you out. But these you're going to definitely want to keep on you at all times. And let's start putting in this. Need a set of vice grips, a good set of vice grips for holding down a few different things. Grabbing onto a rounded off nut, bolt. Chain wrench for pulling off crankshaft pulleys and such. You're going to need that for doing crankshaft position sensors on certain vehicles, or if you're doing a timing chain cover, timing chain. There'll be a few different situations when you need that. You could possibly use this for doing an oil change if you can't get the filter off, but honestly, if you're working out of a trunk, I really wouldn't suggest doing oil changes, because then you're going to have a container in there. You're going to make a mess inside your trunk. It gets really bad really fast. I do recommend having a drain pan, but more so for doing radiators and things like that. I really just don't like doing oil changes. Bent needle nose pliers, hose clamps, tool retrieval, bolt retrieval. Go down there. Pry bars, at least one decent pry bar, alternators, getting the tension on those when you're going to tighten them down. There's numerous things you're going to need a pry bar for. Usually carry a shorter pry bar also for getting into tight spaces, but if you only have room for one thing, get a decent pry bar. Cheater bar is definitely going to be your friend. I have a 1/2 inch breaker I'll go over with you, but cheater bar for the 3/8 ratchet is definitely going to be handy. Still need a decent hammer. Get a good 3 or 5 pound hammer. I got like a 3. 2 didn't seem heavy enough. Nice 3-pound hammer. You've seen some of my videos. I use that for tightening up some bolts on the calipers and stuff like that. When you just don't have enough room to get leverage on a breaker bar. Brake caliper tool. You're going to push the piston back on the caliper. You'll be doing more brake jobs than anything. It's good to have something like that. 1/2 inch ratchet. A couple 1/2 inch extensions. Those can go down there. And I think that's about it for the bottom half of this. I'm going to take this 15/16 and 7/8 and put those in the bottom down there too. 15/16 ball joints, tie rod ends, 7/8 oxygen sensors, some tie rod ends, ball joints. And then the 3/8 ratchet. You're going to need a good assortment of extensions. Sometimes you're going to have to get way down into something, and sometimes you're going to need that shorty. So make sure you have a good assortment of 3/8 extensions. 3/8 ratchet, stubby 3/8 ratchet. I've used this a few times in the last couple of weeks. Let's actually go ahead and move those there for the moment. The 1/4 inch ratchet. And I mean, once you drive around, this is all going to turn into a big mess. So you're going to be digging around looking for tools, which I find completely frustrating, but it's just the nature of working out of a trunk at the time. So box end wrench, open end wrench, 19 down to 10, and an 8. If If you really need anything smaller than an 8, the vice grip pliers will definitely cover that most of the time. Get those set up. Needle nose pliers, a must. The vice grip pliers, hose clamps, strip bolts, things like that, that's a must. A good set of screwdrivers. And of course, the stubbies, because you're definitely going to need to get into some tight spaces. It's a good idea to have different size screwdrivers. I'm not carrying my impact screwdriver. I'll go ahead and add that to the box in there. The impact screwdriver you're going to need for getting the screw out of brake rotors. I didn't think of that yet, and I haven't had to come across that, but you'll definitely need the impact screwdriver. And small set of vice grips for closing off hoses, fuel lines, or coolant lines. Just good to have. The Torx bits, I'm not carrying the E-bits, I'm carrying some Torx bits. They should double up and work as Allen wrenches in a lot of situations. This would be the bare minimum that you'd want to have. Down to T10, all the way up to a T55. Just got to take caution when you're using these on an Allen head that you don't strip out either the tool or the hole that you're going into. But you'll want to have those with you too. I'm going to set those down in here. I don't use those very often. I can move this. Some JB weld. There's some situations where you're going to need some kind of epoxy or adhesive. I just carry this one with me. I've used it about twice. Get a nice brush, cleaning some stuff off, getting around things. A magnet, of course. An inspection mirror, of course. A decent punch. Can be a couple times when you need to punch a bolt out of a hole or something like that. And you don't want to be using your screwdriver too often. So, a punch. A couple of good picks for pulling out O-rings and things like that. That's going to be a must. I carry the brake caliper grease with me for doing the brake jobs. A pen, got to mark stuff. Butt splice connectors. I keep them in here usually, but I'm going to move those over to the electric box. And a jumper wire for testing relays, things like that. That goes with the voltmeter. That'll go in the electrical box. At least a triangle file. You're going to need this for cleaning off threading if something gets boogered up. There'll be a few different things that you're going to need that for, but at least have one file, one decent file. And then a chisel for hammering apart stuff that's stuck together with some RTV, timing chain covers, hub assemblies. You're going to have to wedge in and chisel off a hub assembly on front-wheel drive vehicles. Electrical tape. I got some in the electric box, but I go ahead and carry a couple of rolls of that. Multiple uses. Something, and need a lighter. Sometimes you're going to have to melt some plastic or something like that with a screwdriver, whatnot. It's just handy to have. One thing I didn't have last week that I realized I needed was some fuel rail disconnect tools. This set has seen its fair share of use, but it doesn't matter which ones you get. If you're doing a radiator or something like that and it's got a trans cooler line on it, it might have these connections on it. You're going to need a set of the fuel line disconnect tools. There'll be numerous cases when you just can't, you don't have a screwdriver or a pick that you can get in there to get those loose. You're just going to have something. So make sure you get some of these, carry those with you. That's it for that box. Let me reset real quick and I'll go through the heavy tools, the jack, and the electrical testing tools that I have. All right, I'll try to get through this. This is the other setup of the heavier tools that you're going to need. This is pretty messy, but I'll try to go through it one by one. I think this is the entirety of what's going in the trunk. So let's go through this. Off camera over here, we have a jack, I got a 1.5 ton jack and 1/2 inch breaker bar goes in there. Some wood blocks for working on trucks. I need those in there also. Star wrench covers most of the problems. All right, I'm gonna stop you right there. That is not a jack stand. So what I'm gonna forget in this video here is I'm gonna forget that along with the jack, you need to at least have one jack stand. And it's not only for your safety there. Usually I'm gonna go ahead and take this tire and I'm gonna jam it underneath there, but I had to lower it down so far and use these blocks that luckily I had to hold the weight off of the control arm so that I could get this CV axle out so that I could replace this vacuum hub locker. So keep a jack stand with you and maybe even throw that tire underneath there just for your safety. Don't do it like this. I know what's going on here and I know exactly how to do this, but luckily I had enough stuff to do this. Don't do it this way. Put a jack stand in that box. I'm gonna forget to tell you to do that, but just go ahead and remember. Thanks. Let's see. That drain pan I was talking about, you're gonna be using that for radiators and whatnot. And I suggest getting a hand pump if you're gonna do any gear oil, differential fills or anything like that. I mean, you can usually use the old containers, like oil changes and stuff like that, if you really wanted to do one. But I have another funnel set up too. I have the funnel set that you actually use to fill radiators and stuff like that. But in a pinch, starting out, this will definitely be something that you need at least to fill with oil and coolant. And that usually goes over here too, under this box. So let's get this in here first. So, electrical. This guy right here, you're gonna want a decent voltmeter. Get a good one, about 30 bucks. Get a decent one. Gotta have at least something. Testing circuitry, battery voltage, charging, things like that. This is a battery tester. This is about $50. This tests the condition of the battery, the state of health, and the state of charge. It's like a load tester. Definitely got to have something like that. A lot of people say, well, it doesn't start that well, or I'll let it sit for 2 days and it won't start. You can just instantly check the state of health on the battery. 30% state of health, just needs a new battery. Quick and easy. Let's see. Terminal cleaner. Got to have a beat up terminal cleaner. Another roll of electrical tape. Spark tester. You're gonna need that even on the newer vehicles. You're gonna need a spark tester most of the time. This is a 50 to 1,000 volt AC tester. That just checks for pulse. It's very handy for sticking on spark plug wires on older vehicles, just to see if there's any spark at all. It'll operate even before the vehicle starts. It'll just give you a pulse, make sure that you're not having a misfire, there's not a bad coil, something like that. Good for diagnosing. Some solder. That jumper wire's around here somewhere. Oh, I lost it. But a little bit of wire. Here's some wire for some jump wire. You can get a test wire lead with the alligator clips on it. Those are very handy. Some butt splice connectors, and I suggest a cordless soldering iron. This thing heats up almost instantly. Just so handy to have. Wrap it around electrical tape. You can get some heat shrink tubing if you'd like also. It doesn't take up much room. Then just solder and heat shrink the things together with the torch that I had earlier. That's a quick and easy way to do some electrical repairs. I had an OBD scanner in here. You want to buy the one that does SRS and airbags, the airbag one, and anti-lock brakes. It's about 150 or better. I think I left it in a vehicle. Of course, always double check your tools and make sure you're not leaving anything in a car, or you get frustrated like I am now. So there's that bin. I had a vehicle I had to work on where I needed to set the timing. I don't use a timing light very often, and I'm going to omit that from this. but I had to set the timing and I had to set the air-fuel mixture on the carburetor, so I had to use a vacuum gauge to set that. I'm going to keep the vacuum gauge because you can use this in numerous situations where you need to check vacuum solenoids, like on the evap system or anything else. So keep the vacuum gauge with you in your bag of tricks, but you don't necessarily need a timing light. Depending on what you're working on. If you're working on an older vehicle, you might need a timing light, but a jump box. This has saved me more than enough times. They're about $100. I've beaten the crap out of this thing and it's still working just fine. A tire inflator is about 30 bucks. You know, these aren't bad. This has seen its fair share of use for sure. It's still going. So if you got a low tire, you got a TMPS sensor, a TPMS sensor that's acting up, and you just notice that one of the tires is a little bit low, just fill it up for the customer, reset the sensors for them. Random stray vacuum line. If you can, get a couple of feet of different sized vacuum line, about this size and down. You're always going to run into a situation where you got a bad vacuum line leaking, causing a lean condition or a misfire, and it's good to have a little bit of vacuum line so you don't have to make a special trip. Zip ties. There's my jumper wire. That goes in the other box. And some emery cloth or some sandpaper. Cleaning ground contact points on the frame, things like that. I also ended up having to get some gasket making material. Had to cut out a gasket for an oil cooler on a diesel engine. So it's nice to have a little bit of this stuff. There might be a small situation where you need to make a gasket for something. It doesn't take up any room. Keep that with you. Tape measure. Figure out some kind of size differences on those rotors when they go ahead and tell you that there's 2 rotors listed for this engine or for this vehicle, and it's either 12.5 or 13.25, and you just can't eyeball it. And measure your rotor sizes. So just have a tape measure with you. Box of gloves, bag of rags. The Right Stuff 1-minute gasket maker. It's pretty much the only one that I use anymore. It's very resistant to fuels, oils, things like that. Use it in transmission pan gaskets. I have not had a problem with this one yet. I've had a problem with all of the other kinds. So you definitely want a couple of cans or 3 of brake clean. And that's it for that box. And now it's summertime. You're gonna have a lot of overheating issues, cooling issues. So you don't have to have a pressure tester with you at all times. I do have one for my main box, but at least carry a gallon of water with you so that if somebody has a leak going on, you can fill it back up and determine where the leak's coming from, if it's a radiator leaking, if it's a water pump leaking. So for diagnosing, that'll really give you a heads up. So carry a gallon of water with you. And I have an AC manifold set. Usually carry a couple of bottles of Freon with me. And a black light for leak detection, but most of the times you're just going to be refilling. And if it goes low in a couple of days or whatnot, the customer will definitely let you know. So you can try to use those really crappy cans that they sell at O'Reilly, but you're not getting any live information on the high side, so you can't really make a diagnosis if there's a blocked expansion valve or what's really going on with it. So, and you really can't see live pressure. So when you're filling these up, you dump in a couple of cans, you want it to come down to about 28 to 30. That's usually on about a 60, 70 degree day. That's usually going to be when it's the coldest AC coming out inside the car. So you just can't get that information from those little filler valves that they sell at O'Reilly. And I try to tell customers to not buy those things, but. And I use Auto Ingenuity Pro Line connector. for my factory replacement scanner. This thing will work on iOS on my iPhone. It gives you live data, bidirectional controls. It'll read all of the body control modules, like on an 05 Mercedes C550. I think there's something like 73 computers in there. This will give you access to all of them. It'll give you thousands of lines of live data from numerous sensors. This one's good to have for diagnosing, checking sensor output voltages and just make sure everything's in parameter and stuff like that. See why it's throwing certain codes. You can graph off information, watch cooling temperature sensors, just a myriad of things that you can do with this. Not cheap, but if you're going to take a step up, diagnosing tools are definitely going to be the way that you want to go. A lot of hand tools and things like that are going to be helpful. You can acquire those along the way, but people want to know what's wrong with their car. They want an accurate diagnosis, get a decent scanner. Even the tablet scanners that have bidirectional controls be something that you really want to get your hands on. Flashlight, you're definitely going to need a decent flashlight. I'm still using the night core. I've been using this thing for over a year now, beating the crap out of it, dumping it in transmission fluid and stuff like that. The rubber on it still works great. This one's just starting to split after all the abuse that I've given it. But maybe I've had this 2 years now. These are about 30 bucks on Amazon. Really bright, really handy. Can hold it in your mouth. Headlamps don't work for me. It's at the wrong angle and you keep hitting it on stuff. It's just not a good option. So, all in all, that's basically the entire setup. I'll show you how I jam that in the trunk real quick, and that'll be that for this video. Alright, as you see so far, we got the jack in here. Just jam that sucker back in there. This box of electrical goodies. And the brake clean and the gloves and the regs. Slide in on that side. AC manifold set. Fits right in there. And set this tray up there. Gallon of water over there. Main toolbox there. And the electrical off to the side. You can see I still got plenty of room for some parts if I need it. Or making a mess. So it is very possible to work out of the trunk of a car. You just got to take a couple of minutes to get things organized right, know where everything is. This makes it really easy. Just jump right in here, had access to all of my tools that I need. Take my electrical set with me if I need to do a diagnosis on something. Have access to everything here. And if I need to, I can just pull this out, drag that box forward, get to my jack, which I use on almost every job. But this makes it really easy. Instead of working out of the trunk of a car with I've seen people with drain pans just full of sockets and stuff like that. And that would just annoy the crap out of me. Even though I'm in a limited situation here where I'm working out of the trunk of a car, you still need to be able to find your tools within a reasonable amount of time. If I'm looking for a socket for more than 3 or 4 seconds, I'm going to start getting frustrated. You work inefficient. It's just not a good thing. It doesn't look professional to the customer. This doesn't necessarily look professional to a customer either. At least it's clean and organized. You know, I can go right in and get a 14 mil socket. If I need a short, I can get a short. Put everything back when you're done so you know exactly where everything is. It gets a little bit more convoluted when I get up here and I'm starting to dig around looking for something. But at least I know where it should be. And I know what tools I have. I've spent the time to go through it one by one, set it out on a table, make sure you can see exactly what you have, understand what you have, use them keep a list going of every time you go, oh, I wish I had this tool, or I need this. Make a list, hit the parts stores up, go to Harbor Freight, whatever you need to do, get some new tools, expand on what you have. I guess watching a video like this might be beneficial because this gives you an idea, at least what you need to start. You're always going to come across something that you're not going to have. I omitted the Volkswagen tools. There's a 12-point torque style socket that Volkswagen uses for the seats, the seat belts, tensioner pulleys, things like that. You're going to come across that, and you're going to have to run into a parts store to get those. So just something to be aware of, especially when you're starting out. Always try to give yourself a little bit more time. Take a look at what you're doing. Do a diagnosis first, and double check. Make sure that you have all the tools before you schedule that job. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself tearing something apart. You're going to be halfway done, and you're going to find that one bolt that you don't have the tool for. Try to schedule your jobs around the times that the parts stores are open so that you can run in and get a tool if you need it. Just be diligent about your work, and you should succeed with no problems.